Cold Cans Nation, this episode, we're doing something a little bit twisted. We're talking to head brewer of Pyramid Brewing Company, Ryan Pappe, who brought us 3 beers, all very much related, to taste and to analyze, and which we'll rank at the very end. A little bit twisted because we're finally at the end of 2017 in the very last episode. The Cold Cans boys are going to sit down and learn something about beer.
All right, today we're joined by Ryan Pappe, the head brewer at Pyramid Brewing Company here in Seattle. Thank you for joining us, Ryan. It's great to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great. So why don't you start off by just giving us a little brief history of your history in beer brewing and where you got started and how you ended up in Seattle.
I started out after I graduated from college, moved into a house with a bunch of friends and started home brewing as a hobby. And caught that bug and did that for almost 6 years. And about halfway through thought, this is pretty cool. I'd like to do this for a job. This is better than sitting behind a desk in an office.
Right.
I made some friends and tried to find my way into the industry. And the first job opportunity I got was to be an assistant brewer for a buddy that had moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and was brewing. So I picked up and moved across the countryside unseen to Cleveland, which is not the normal path people take, for sure.
Right.
But it was a good adventure, and I spent a year and a half there brewing on 2 different brew pub systems.
Awesome.
And then my wife and I wanted to get back to the Northwest, so we moved back to Washington and spent a year at Dick's Brewing down in Centralia.
Okay.
And then from there, I got back to Pyramid and have been there since. I've been there just over 9 years.
Wow.
Nice. So we've on this show, we've kind of like dug deep into how different breweries that we were drinking started. And we've seen, when you mentioned this, I thought about it. We've seen like a ton of people who've started their brewery by like piquing their interest through home brewing. Is that common like in the profession? And if so, like how does it translate? How does that leap go when you go from little single batch, whatever, home brewing in your garage to a real like production company?
Yeah, it both perfectly translates and also doesn't translate at all. In that, the science is exactly the same. You're doing the same process, whether you're doing it in your basement or you're doing it in a giant beer factory. The difference is really kind of the industrial professional scale where you're dealing with pumps and chemicals and pressure and very, very expensive equipment. And there's just a lot more engineering and a lot more and also the necessity of high quality and consistent beer being put out is a big part of being a professional that isn't so important as a home brewer.
Right.
I think most brewers I work with started as home brewers.
Wow.
It's a great hobby. It's a great way to start and a great way to learn about beer.
Sure.
In the long run, whether it saves you any money, probably not, because once you catch the bug, you just want to buy more equipment and you want to make it more complicated. But I haven't really done much since I became professional. I had to leave all my equipment behind when I moved to Cleveland, and now I'm in a brewery all day, so I don't want to give up my weekends.
Sure.
To necessarily do it some more, but it's still. The freedom of it is still very appealing as a professional.
Yeah, and like the creativity to it, like you said, there's maybe more rigid standards for quality, but the reason you fell in love, like you don't need to bring the home brewing kit back out in the garage in the weekends. You're doing that all day, and that's really cool. We've talked a lot about on this show about sort of trying to find your passion and being able to do what you love, and just the story of doing it as a hobby and then expanding that to doing what you love full time is awesome. It's just cool to see that there's so many breweries that start that way.
Oh yeah, and I think most, if not all, brewers have that drive and passion, and that I don't know, they're addicted to making beer because that's got to be the reason, because it's not the easiest job. It's a lot of cleaning, it's a lot of repetition, it's a lot of physical labor, and honestly, you're not going to make the money you're going to make if you were, say, into, computers or financial, or so it's got to be a passion project.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. So you landed, you went to Cleveland, started in your garage, go to Cleveland. It looks like in 2008 you landed at under the umbrella of Pyramid. So what's kept you there for a decade? Like why Pyramid, and why for that length of time?
Well, I would say, one, I haven't stopped learning new things. I mean, that's what's kept me in the industry in general, and here at Pyramid specifically, is you never stop learning new things. There's always new challenges, whether it's coming up with the next new beer that we hope people will love to drink, or whether it's how do you deal with catastrophic problems in a brewery that come when you least expect them, and getting to buy new research and buy new equipment, whether it's going to a conference and networking and learning new, there's new science being figured out about the brewing process all the time, whether it's yeast or growing new hop varieties and developing new barley strains, learning about how grains are malted, the challenges that the farmers have growing the ingredients that we then use, and then figuring out where the grain, after we're done using it, how we get that to a farmer to use. I mean, it's endlessly fascinating, and that keeps me totally engaged. And then over the years, as I've sort of moved up in the hierarchy in the brewery, that just brings with it new challenges and new opportunities to learn, and new responsibilities, which are always good and bad. But
right.
And it's, I know at our brewery, we take a lot of pride in the fact that we work at one of the really formative first craft breweries in the Northwest, and really, which means really in the country.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history there that brings with it extra challenges, because it's not necessarily the brewery that's been around the longest that everyone's curious about and gets talked about a lot in the current craft beer market, but it still keeps us fascinated and motivated.
Right. So we've talked on the show a little bit. You mentioned this craft beer market and what keeps your curiosities piqued, the new science that's being sort of unraveled and new technologies being invented. As two absolute amateurs in the beer industry, and we're trying to learn all the time, we've thought about this concept of beer that's been around since basically the dawn of man. That we've had beer for hundreds and hundreds of years. And, as we look at the business side of things for all of the beers that we're trying on this podcast, we see that, like, if it's a craft brewery, if it's something like Pyramid, and we'll get to these three beers in just a minute that we're drinking, but if it's something like that, it started either in the 80s or like sort of just after that. There's the evolution maybe was the last 20, 30 years or so, where this like craft beer industry really, from an economic standpoint, just exploded, it seemed like. So in your opinion, why the last 20 years for a product that has been around since mankind for the last 200 years?
Yeah. I think that it's, there's many ways to look at it. Historically, we in this country, and I think probably most parts of the world, that beer is the standard go-to drink. Historically, every town, village, center of community had a brewery. It was only with the Industrial Revolution that we started thinking of beer as something that needed to get shipped. Hey, everyone needs to drink our beer. No, for most of human history, people just drank what was made where they lived,
Right.
with what they grew, and sort of took on the tastes that people there liked. And that's why beer here tastes different from the beer over there.
Right.
And really with Prohibition and the temperance movement really squashed all that down. A lot of breweries closed, and then Prohibition ends. And what's left are the people that could afford to stay in the game after not being able to make beer for, a decade or so.
Right.
And so it got so industrial and sort of homogenized and really boring. I think it was only a matter of time before people relearned that, hey, there's more to this. There's flavor, there's sense of sort of the local terroir, or, hey, we grow barley here. Let's drink beer made with our barley. Hey, we got all these hops. Let's throw them in and see what that does.
Right.
With craft beer started by kind of looking to Europe and seeing what, people drink in England and Germany and Belgium, and hey, let's try that. That's crazy, weird stuff. And now we've gone so head over heels for it that all of those traditional beer making cultures are looking at the U.S. and starting to copy what we do. So it's a crazy time, because we've kind of gone full circle, and we're back to, every town has a brewery again,
Right.
if not 5. And, it's kind of the golden age where you can get beer from all over the world, but you can also drink beer from 30 different breweries in the town you live in.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Like that. And we've talked about kind of that localization. Like, we live in such a global society where communication is extremely easy. We have our smartphones and laptops, but with that sort of ease of communication, we kind of sometimes lose our sense of locality, because we can go and chat with anybody anywhere at any time. And on Amazon, I could order literally anything I could imagine in 2 hours. A drone drops it off of my head. And like, kind of embracing that locality it's cool to hear that the industry's gone full circle, because it does seem to be a sweet spot, golden age.
Yeah, for sure. And here in the Northwest, where we seem to, I think one reason we've kicked off, sort of led the craft beer revolution, if you will, is we're out here on the edge of things in this big country. And conveniently enough, we grow most of the barley and the hops right here. And so they're local for us.
Right.
There's, whether it's beer or whether it's craft distilling or winemaking, cheese making, bakeries, chocolatiers, coffee, for goodness sake. I mean, it seems to be something in the spirit of where we live that has, I think, helped kick it off a little faster here. But the fact that you can go to Iowa or Alabama or Florida or Maine, and you're still going to find breweries everywhere and more opening all the time. So it's clearly just the right time to return to that way of being. And I think that with how global and instant everything is, something that you can take a picture of your beer and send it to somebody, but you kind of have to be there to drink it and experience it to really understand what it's all about.
Yeah, totally.
Put you where you're at.
Yeah.
Pay attention a little bit.
Where I'm at right now is sitting here with a Pyramid Snowcap Winter Ale in my hands.
I know.
Waiting to be opened.
He's just trembling to open this thing.
I have been licking my lips waiting to open this thing. All right.
So we're going to crack open. So the listeners should know we were very kindly provided 3 giant bottles, 1 pint, 6 fluid ounce bottles, 650 milliliters of Pyramid Snowcap sort of line. So we're starting with the Pyramid Snowcap Winter Ale. We're moving to the Pyramid Bourbon Barrel Aged Snowcap Imperial Winter Ale, and we're finishing with the Pyramid Brewer's Reserve Super Imperial Winter Ale, also of the Snowcap line. So we're starting with the basics. Cheers.
Cheers. So first of all, I would say you should have the Super Snowcap and then the barrel aged to get the right progression of flavors here.
Okay. But we can do the Snowcap first, the original first?
So Snowcap first, and then Super Snowcap, which is the Brewer's Reserve.
Okay.
And then the barrel aged third.
Nice.
Okay, cool. We'll have to talk about why that progression is as we move. So just the pure Pyramid Snowcap Winter Ale. What makes this beer this beer?
So this is kind of a cool beer because in this day and age where people are generally drinking the newest, coolest thing, this is our 31st year of making Snowcap.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
It has been around. It's like one of the examples of a Northwest winter ale. It's not the only one. There's a few that have stood the test of time, and we're really sort of proud that this one has held its own all these years. It is, at 31 years old, I haven't been drinking long enough to tell you why it's like this originally, but from my point of view, it's inspired by sort of English style winter warmers.
Yep.
Definitely with a Northwest twist. So it's a pretty simple recipe. It's pale malt and caramel malt and chocolate malt.
Okay.
Can I ask you what winter?
Alcohol,
What does winter warmer mean? Does that refer to the alcohol content more so than other things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it means it's going to be a little heartier. It's going to be a little higher alcohol.
Got it.
I mean, you're not going to see. I guess you'll see more now, but even at 7%, which is how strong this is, that was very strong 31 years ago for a beer.
Sure.
People were not drinking. Over 5 was what people expected beer to be. So 7 was pushing the limits. Now that doesn't seem like anything, but it still has with the chocolate and the caramel in there. It's still a sort of a satisfying cold weather beer, and here where it's gray and rainy all the time, or maybe you go up to the mountains and you're skiing and you're in the snow all day, or even if you're just at home, and it's enjoying the Netflix or whatever. It's a very satisfying beer to drink. Chocolate notes, caramel, a little bit of hoppiness, more sort of woody herbal hops, not the spicy, citrusy, resiny stuff.
Yeah,
like we get in a lot of our Northwest beers now.
Smelling it smells like you mentioned that like woody. That's the first thing I got when I smelled it. But then taste it, you get more of the caramel and sort of the chocolate.
Yeah.
But when I smelled it, I was like, this might be hard alcohol if you just put this in front of my nose, because it has that like woody, like sort of Woodford Reserve touch to the top of it. But it's really good. Like, yeah, you don't need a fireplace with this thing. It builds a fireplace in you as you drink it. It's wonderful.
All right.
Okay, cool. So now,
at 31 years, we're just keeping this thing going. That's even
awesome.
though we've been making it for 31 years, I'd say we get better at it every year. So we do our best.
Nice.
That's
well,
awesome.
Your best is delicious. So
very good.
Keep at it for 31 more. So now, on head brewer's recommendation, we're moving to the Pyramid Brewers Reserve Super Snowcap Imperial Winter Ale.
Yeah.
So why this progression?
So this was we first made this, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, and we've been making it for ever since we first came out with it. We've been doing it every year, but just small batch, draft only to serve in our ale house. And starting last year with the 30th anniversary, we actually put it in bottles and put it out for a wider distribution so people could try it. And really, it's just an imperial version of Snowcap. So we just sort of amped everything up.
Mm-hmm.
It's 8.7%. It has a little bit of more alcohol, sort of spiciness in the flavor, and it's got the same ingredients, but the proportions are tweaked just a little bit. So it's similar, but especially when you taste them side by side, it's fun to see how they express themselves a little differently.
You can see it in the beer. It's like you can't see through this beer at all. It's totally opaque.
It's definitely darker. It's a little heavier, I don't know. I get less hops out of it. The bitterness is there, but it doesn't have quite the hop.
No,
sort of spicy flavor. So it's got more of that sort of rounded coffee chocolate roast
Coffee for
caramel
sure.
flavor.
Both of our eyes lit up when you said coffee because it does have that.
Yeah.
That's I think what I was looking for too. Yeah, it's much smoother. It's I mean the first one was delicious and this just like you said kind of smoothes the edges out and man,
This one's a
8.7.
little more luxurious.
Yes, that is a good way to put it. The Brewer's Reserve. Okay, so
moving on.
Man, that I could. These are definitely we do a segment where we talk about sipability or sessionability. Sessionability meaning if we're drinking a Bud Light and you just want to drink 15 of them to get drunk in a tailgate. Sipability meaning your winter warmers.
Yeah, you're enjoying it a little bit.
God, I would love to sip these. And you poured these, Nick. You were pouring these into a
poured
cup.
a bit heavy.
You poured a bit heavy. We had to get through these, and now I'm turning these into sessionable beers, which they don't deserve
I feel great.
to be.
I pounded them, and I feel great.
They are delicious.
You were feeling merry and bright.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah. All right, moving on to the bourbon barrel-aged snow cap. And this is a beautiful bottle, by the way.
Yeah, this is my favorite design label.
I love the
That's wonderful.
look of the bottle.
Yeah, so why this the third one?
So this one's because it's even stronger.
Okay.
Really. So this is also, so we first came out with this last year as well for the 30th anniversary of Snow Cap, and it was so good we had to come out with it again. Basically, we've taken Snow Cap, aged it in bourbon barrels for a year.
Oh, wow.
And then blended it back in with some fresh Super Snow Cap to bring the alcohol down to a nice even 10%.
Oh, boy. Bring it down to 10%.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Ooh.
It's so you've got that nice base of the Snow Cap and Super Snow Cap, and with the age on the Snow Cap, that really softens things and rounds out the malt flavors. But then you've got that bourbon note, which adds this really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bourbon. It smells
Yeah.
like bourbon, but it's almost like it's got notes of like bourbon chocolate milk when you're drinking it. You've got those chocolate notes, a little bit of roastiness, but everything's kind of soft and creamy and that nice bright vanilla and oak bourbon floating on top of everything.
Yeah.
This is the nightcap. This is you want to finish here because you want to sip on it, enjoy it, and you probably won't forget anything else you're supposed to do after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
This should be in a log cabin with a nice robe on and some like leather chair, and you're swirling it like a bourbon. That is exactly what this is. By the way, the last beer, I was like, look, you can't even see through it. This thing is like staring into the abyss. This will answer back if you stare at it long enough. This is really good.
And I'll mention, you poured yourself a little hefty pour there after complaining about my heavy pours. You give yourself a full glass of the strongest one we got.
Well, as soon as he said, I don't know, the progression I also took to mean like the pleasure I'm going to get out of it. And this third one, I wanted to make sure I didn't get short. But 10%, I'm going to be on my ass if I drink this whole thing. Very cool.
Those are all delicious.
They really were. We would say this if the head brewer for Pyramid wasn't on the line. Like they really are tasty beverages. So the segment we wanted to get to, so normally around this point of the podcast, so normally we'll drink a full beer around a half to 2/3 of the way down. We'll get to a segment we call Parable or Terrible. And that's where we eat something with the beer and we'll describe like whether that's a good pairing for that particular beer or not. We don't have anything to eat today, but as the head brewer, if you were sitting down, pick any one of these. I mean, they are kind of a spectrum from one another. Is there anything off the top of mind that you'd recommend to chomp down on? I mean, this last one was a meal in and of itself, but is there any sort of food recommendations you have with this type of beer?
Well, here's how I'm going to frame it, especially if you are lucky enough to have all three beers available. I would almost say that if you're having like a holiday feast, you pair Snow Cap with the meal, because I think it's going to go good with any meat. It's going to go good with any roasted vegetables. It's going to hold its own. It's going to add some flavor. It's definitely going to keep you lubricated as you're, feasting with family and friends.
Sure.
Keep everyone jolly. But it's not, especially with the bitterness, it's going to help clear your palate between bites and between sips and keep you going. And then when you move to dessert, that's where you bring in the Super Snow Cap and that little extra oomph, a little richer body. That's going to pair great with your chocolate cake or your pie and ice cream. And then, of course, after the food's put away and you're just digesting, that's when you go to the barrel-aged stuff and you just sip on that. It doesn't need food.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
That's the picture that I'd like to paint in my mind with ideal settings for these.
If that doesn't get you through the holidays, I don't know what will.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Pyramid trifecta.
A 3-course meal of a spectrum of one beer, that's perfection for the holidays.
Oh, love it.
That's great. Yeah. This beer,
Very
I'm
parable.
still sipping. That is parable indeed, with anything. So I'm still sipping this beer. I was peeking at the Beer Advocate score. So the next kind of segment we do is we'll look at how these beers fare in Beer Advocate. And my heads up, and I don't want to get you in trouble at all as the head brewer, but both of us are a bit dubious of how Beer Advocate scores, because the scores are generally reflected as the public score first, and then the Beer Advocate bros bring in another score after that. And I don't know, we're amateurs for sure, but we've noticed some strange trends with Beer Advocate. In any case, we wanted to get your thoughts on just beer reviewing in general, the culture around it, like the people who come and are kind of building this for a living, including Beer Advocate. You know, how do you feel with how that is represented?
I would say I think it's a necessary evil.
Right.
I think it's great to have an outlet for people that are obsessed with beer and drink beer and think about beer and talk about beer, that they have an outlet to express their opinions and keep track of what they've tasted and see what's great on the other side of the country that you can't get. But at the end of the day, I think especially as a larger brewery, that the people that review beers on Beer Advocate and the other beer reviewing websites, they tend to be the vocal minority.
Yeah.
I think especially if you're a smaller brewery and you've got a beer that everyone loves on that site, that's awesome. That's going to help you out a lot. You're going to stay in business. Whether we get a great review or a poor review, it doesn't necessarily correlate very well with how well the beer actually sells.
Interesting.
So, for us, we need to judge our beers on, do we like it? Do we think it's good? And is it selling well enough to keep making? We've got big tanks, big kettles. We make large batches of beer. We got to sell all of that. And it doesn't matter how great it is. If we can only sell half of a batch, it's just not worth making. So I guess it comes down to it. The calculus changes according to how big the brewery is and how established you are. I think if you get a great review and you're a new brewery, that can set you and that can keep you in business for a couple of years while people figure out that, hey, you do make more than one awesome thing. You make lots of great things, or it tells you that, hey, maybe I was going to focus on this and maybe I'll just slide over here and focus more on this beer that everyone is raving about.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like that. I like the idea of it as like sort of a necessary evil, and it's definitely, to me, I always struggle with the concept of what you said. People deeply passionate about beer, about craft beer, about the brewing process, about everything. To not sort of look at everything on the spectrum of good or bad, which is the primary reason Beer Advocate exists. Like literally, their score is something out of 5, and they rate it as good or bad or whatever. To look at it in that spectrum is just very strange. You wouldn't go to an art museum, be passionate about art, and when you're staring at a painting, you wouldn't say, "Let's look on and rate this from good to bad." Like it just doesn't make any sense. It's I don't know. It's the wrong viewpoint, in my opinion, to consider something like this. It's a spectrum of like how much you enjoy, or not even enjoy, just it's an appreciation of a thing. I don't know. It's an abstract topic. Yeah. We've talked about it on a couple of episodes, but it's refreshing to hear you say it's a necessary
good to get your
evil.
view on that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Outside of Pyramid, if you're not drinking one of your own beers, you need a respite, and you want to look at something you deeply appreciate outside of your own brewery, what are your, maybe just 2 or 3, like what are your go-to beers? And I know it can be situational, but if whatever pops to your mind, what are some of your favorites?
I'm really bad at. I don't have favorites. I don't.
On a scale of 1 to 5, where would you rate
anything? But me, I mean, I work with the beer I make all the time,
right?
And I also have it pretty readily to hand. So, if I go home at night, that's my own beer in the fridge. That's what I'm going to reach for.
Right.
So every time I get out, I'm unfortunately once I'm out in public, I'm like every other beer geek, and that I'm going to order something I've never had before.
Right.
And I'll probably go, oh yeah, that was okay. Or, ooh, that's a new brewery. I want to try their stuff. Or, ooh, I love those guys. I haven't had that beer yet. Let's try that. Or, ooh, new hop. Or, oh, I've heard of that. They use this technique. I got to see what that tastes like. So I do the same thing. Drives me crazy as a brewer because, I want people to like love our beer and to just drink our beer all the time, but
Sure.
That's just not how it works anymore. And I don't even do that. So I don't expect other people to either.
Gotcha.
I don't have a good answer for you other than whatever I haven't had yet.
Yeah. Right. So you're curious.
Talked about or looks good or.
So in that
time of day, how am I feeling?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
very
it is
situational.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. That's a big part of our show, talking about that. So in that experimentation with the drinking of different beers, how much would you say you get to do that when you're brewing beer? Like how much do you get to experiment with a new beer versus, brewing the go-tos that you have that sell? How much do you get to kind of experiment and see what else you might be able to make?
We do as much as we can, and I wish it was more. Because, honestly, we could sit down, my brew team and I could sit down and we could fill 2 pieces of paper with beer ideas that we would like to try in all of 10 minutes. But we brew 1 every week or 2 as we got time. It takes a long time to get through that. So we have more ideas than we have ability to follow through on them.
Yeah.
That being said, it's the fun part of the job. That's where you get creative and
when you're back in the garage, right? Yeah.
Think outside the box. Yeah, exactly. That's I haven't been homebrewing as much, but I've got some of my brewers that take some of our beer home and do crazy things with it and then bring it back so we can taste and see how it goes and that there's no wrong answer for where the next great beer idea comes from. So I love that's one of what I love working with a group of brewers is everyone has a different perspective and has some experience and has the passion. And so we're always bringing new ideas to each other and get inspired that way.
Awesome.
Cool. So you've given us just an incredibly generous amount of your time, and we super appreciate you being on the show. We have one last thing we want to do, and this is kind of a daunting challenge, but I just want to get your general thoughts on this. So the premise of this show that we do is we're setting out to drink kind of like what you've been talking about. We're experimenting with new beers, but we're also drinking mass market beers. We're drinking Miller Lights and stuff like that. And we're talking about life and culture around that type of beer. Why are people drinking what they're drinking? So I wanted to read you. We have 39 episodes out. This is our 39th episode. We'll rank these beers in our list, but we wanted to read you our current top 10 beers we've drank so far. And we have not done a pyramid beer, so there's this is all non-pyramid, but these are our first pyramid beers that we've done on the show. So this is our current top 10. And the thing that I'm asking you is if you can pick it, good or bad, pick one of these the top 10 that you think is sort of misranked, whether it's not high enough, whether it shouldn't be in the top 10, which I'm not asking you to trash anybody that's in there, or whether that you just don't know much about it and you're interested in it. And even that would be good for us because we've at least piqued your interest. So here are the top 10s. Cool. So this is the top 10 from 10 to 1. The rankings from our podcast. So again, mix of mass market beers and like craft beers so far. So number 10, Sam Adams Boston Lager. 9 is Kona Longboard. 8 is Deschutes Swivelhead Red. 7 is Old Rasputin. 6 is Rodenbach Grand Cru. 5 is Red Hook ESB. 4 is Elysian Night Owl Pumpkin Ale. 3 is Spotted Cow, so Wisconsin beer. 2 is Session Premium Lager. And number 1 so far is Lagunitas Nighttime Ale. So that is our current top 10. What made you jump in that top 10?
Oh man. So it's a quality list.
Oh, thank you.
I haven't had all of those, had most of them. I would say the one that stood out to me is the Rodenbach. And that's just because that's a worldwide classic beer.
Yeah.
You know, I have all the love and the respect for our local craft beers, and we make a lot of great beer here, and Spotted Cow from Wisconsin's great.
You've had that one?
Rodenbach is clear world. I have had Spotted Cow.
Oh, nice. Okay.
The Spotted Cow, I should just give you a heads up, is ranked so highly because part of these rankings are subjective, and that was what was served at my wife and I's wedding. So it's just a soft spot in our hearts.
And that's the important part that you can't separate when you're tasting beers.
That's right.
Absolutely.
A lot of my favorite beers, it's not. I mean, they're great on their own, but I first got into beer really got into beer after graduating from college, and spent some time drinking in Ireland. So that time I had 9 pints of Guinness in an evening. That hurt the next day, but that was lovely. And then drinking any beer in Prague, good, so good. It's so same sort of thing. Rodenbach is kind of up on a pedestal for me.
Okay,
sure.
It's just so unique, and they've got their own process with aging and blending and sour, and it's a people that don't know a lot about beer can't quite wrap their minds around what they're tasting.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some listener feedback that echoed exactly what you said. People basically mistook it for wine because it was so different from what they were used to tasting. And it was a delicious beer that I think some subjectivity got in the way of. But in terms of quality, that's right up there with anything that we've done on this show. But legitimately, so is this Pyramid bourbon barrel aged snowcap. I filled it up again.
Real good.
It's really, really good. So.
Don't let it go to waste. Got to get all of it.
Oh, it will not go to waste. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
We very much appreciate the generous amount of time you spent with us.
It's been my pleasure. I've loved talking with you guys.
Well, there you heard it, folks. That was Ryan Pappe of Pyramid Brewing, the head brewer over there, giving us a lot of insight on beer and the brewing industry in general. Yeah,
we're a little bit nervous to do the podcast, but it was insightful.
Once those snow caps started flowing, I felt much better. I don't know about you, Joe.
We should say, so as we were drinking through those, we poured a little bit into the cup, and since then we have drank, 2.5 of them now?
Yeah,
of those giant 1 pint bottles. And
we'll bigger than a pint, right? Yeah, 1 pint, 6 fluid ounces.
We'll post the pictures on our various social media websites. But who doggy do those get to you?
They hit you.
And so the last thing we have to do on this show, and the last thing we have to do before the end of 2017, is rank this beer. Reflecting back on 2017, is there anything you can muse on? Anything that sticks out to you, Nick?
Well, I've loved doing this podcast, Joe.
Oh.
It's been fun.
Oh.
Genuine from both sides there. No, the podcast has been fun.
It has.
And of course, we're only going to talk about things that relate to Cold Cans Nation. And I guess I've really been astounded by the number of people who have responded to this thing we're doing.
Yep.
And the support we've gotten from them, whether it's t-shirts, koozies, whatever, trying to spread the word.
Beers from Pyramid
Brewing, Seattle's own. It's been really awesome.
Yeah.
It's been great to see that take off.
It really has. I'm looking forward to the New Year's re-rankings. The Power Hour we're about to do will be the next episode.
That was your favorite thing in 2017 is looking ahead to 2018?
No, my favorite thing was starting this podcast with you, Nick. Cheers.
Yes,
cheers to that. Another Pyramid snow cap. So let's rank this motherfucker.
Let's rank it.
We learned a lot.
Favorite part of the show.
Yeah, we learned. Oh, hey, Daddy.
You're those empty clinking bottles. Daddy's in his recliner and he can't get up to get another.
We learned a lot. Honestly, Ryan was a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
The beer really was delicious. I know this is airing, but like the interview ended and I was like, this is going to sound cheap, but this is one of my favorite beers that I've drank on this show. It honestly is wonderful. Yeah. So
and on today, we're recording this on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. The day to be depressed, really.
No, it's the best day of the year. Every day beyond this gets longer.
Sure. I live in the moment, and I can be depressed right now. I don't have to look ahead to the longer days. So I needed a winter warmer to warm me up and get me out of those winter blues.
And this absolutely was. It's heavy alcohol. It's perfect for the holidays. It's a great beer. I think
it was, yeah.
So we have been recently tiering the beering. And so we've gone from Russian Radioactive to the Deplorables to Wild Card to Cream of the Crop. This is clearly in Cream of the Crop territory, right? What was Cream of the Crop? Where did it come from? Deschutes Silverhead Red, Old Rasputin, Rodenbach Grand Cru, Red Hook ESB, Elysian Night Owl Pumpkin Ale, Spotted Cow, Session Premium Lager, and Lagunitas Nighttime Ale. So we kind of unfairly took these three as one, right? So the Pyramid Snowcap Winter Ale, the Pyramid Brewers Reserve Super Snowcap Imperial Winter Ale, which is kind of, as Ryan described it, like it's just like amped up Snowcap, right?
Yeah, it's a bit twisted.
A little bit twisted. And then the Pyramid Bourbon Barrel Aged Snowcap Imperial Winter Ale, which was really wonderful.
We got to get a picture of that one by itself.
Damn, was it beautiful. And it
if
tasted...
you don't get that thing away from me.
Hey.
There's no telling.
Hey, get behind that wheel. It tasted every bit as good as the label is beautiful. It really is wonderful. This is better than the Lagunitas Nighttime Ale. This is our...
Yeah, so we're doing the 3-in-1, the Russian nesting doll of cold cans.
But not at the Russian radioactive section.
Not radioactive.
It's at the opposite end. It's the Russian nesting doll, and for that reason, like the combination of these three things, this is the way Ryan described it too, where you're like lubricating yourself with the Pyramid Snowcap, and then eventually like pairing with your dessert is the Super Snowcap Imperial, and then all on its own after the dessert, after everything's over, you're sitting by the fireplace.
All the kids have gone to bed, and you need a little something for Daddy.
Daddy's got his bourbon barrel aged. God damn, if that's not our new number one.
Yeah.
All right, well.
How could it not be,
It's got to be.
It takes the time over nighttime ale. The time for nighttime is over, folks.
Oh.
It's the winter solstice indeed.
Well done. Well, do we have any parting words of wisdom for our listeners in the new year, in 2018?
I would say, no, we don't.
I would say, to those listeners in 2018 looking for a bit of a reshuffle for their lives, a bit of a re-ranking, look here and look
no further.
Have cheer, because Cold Cans will be back. We'll be stronger than ever in just one solid week. It's Cold Cans Nation!
The Cold Cans podcast is recorded in the Overcast Room at Cloud Studios in Seattle, Washington. Visit cloudstudiosseattle.com